That Don't Sound Right is a podcast about talking the way we did before the internet.
When you could not prove anyone right or wrong, all the expertise was contained in the people involved in the conversation.
We hope you enjoy our conversations. And as you listen, if you find yourself silently saying, that don't sound right, send us a comment. You're one of us. I think that's going to be challenging to get a neuroscientist on That Don't Sound Right.
Yeah, right. Welcome back to another episode of That Don't Sound Right, a podcast about talking. We're your co-hosts, Peter and
I'm Cecil Davis.
and we're just trying to have a conversation without Googling or fact-checking. Those things can so easily kill the conversation.
We tried to kill one last night.
Oh, well,
Repeatedly.
Well, we held our ground for a long time. What was going on?
So the question was, what was the first town you come to in Georgia if you're going up 75 on the West Coast? From Florida. So if you leave Miami, as I did one time, had part of a map. This was back when you navigated only by map.
This is a whole episode.
This is a whole episode.
You trying to navigate. It was your family?
It was me, Christy, and Olivia. Olivia was the only child we had at the time.
So navigating your family out of Miami, coming back to North Carolina with a shred of a map.
A shred of a map. And
what year
Olivia,
is this? What year is this?
This was 98.
98. So with just some shards.
Shards of a map.
If you will.
Drawings in the sand, which leads me to Alligator Alley. I traverse Florida instead of going north.
So that is an east-west highway?
That's an east-west.
Yeah, you're meant to go 95.
And go to Tampa, basically, and then start up what I think, if I remember correctly, is 75.
Should be 75.
And we were trying to remember the name of the town that you come to in Georgia.
Right.
Another
guy with us.
Yeah.
He's trying to recall it.
And he wanted, because I had Dahlonega stuck in my head, which we all know
it's North Georgia.
is in the northwest corner of Georgia.
That's right.
But I knew it kind of sounded like Dahlonega.
Okay.
It had a kind of a sing-songy name.
He reached for his phone.
Several times.
I mean, we really had to restrain him.
Do you want to know what the answer is? I finally thought of it this morning.
Tell me.
Valdosta.
What?
Valdosta.
Valdosta?
Valdosta.
That sounds nothing like Dahlonega.
It has that kind of Dahlonega, Valdosta. They end with a vowel. But isn't that the town? Isn't that it? Valdosta?
I don't know. I never looked it up.
I think that's it.
Valdosta. I trust you.
Valdosta, Georgia. That's where we ended up. Was Valdosta, Georgia.
All right. Well, how did you come to it? How did it come to your head?
It just popped in my head.
Okay.
Valdosta. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how that works?
I know. We didn't Google it though. All right.
I'd really like to have a scientist on here to help us understand why things embedded in our memory either A, take so long to get out, or B, never get out, right? There's stuff in there that we know and have learned, but we can't remember it. What did you have for dinner last night? Tell me right now.
For dinner last night?
Yeah.
I had mashed potatoes and chicken.
Okay, good job.
But I just remember that because we had mashed potatoes. It wasn't mashed potatoes and chicken. It was mashed potatoes and pork.
Okay.
And chicken.
There we
had
go.
2 meats. All right. I think that's going to be challenging to get a neuroscientist on That Don't Sound Right.
Yeah, right. But we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. If there's a neuroscientist out there that's willing to put your reputation on the line and come on our show, let us know.
Hey, maybe just send us an email at tdsrpodcast@gmail.com.
Anonymous.
Just explain it that way. We won't reveal yours.
We will not mention your name.
Yeah, we'll keep it safe.
Okay, I got something for you this week. You think you have an answer to it. So if you've been on the internet recently, you have seen people pouring liquid metal. This is what you saw.
Yeah.
Pouring liquid metal into anthills, and it creates like a tree, basically. When they dig it up, you have all the little pathways.
Right. Well, when you say anthill, you really mean the tunnels that are underground.
Yeah.
The hill is just a small part of it on the surface.
Right. So they will dig it out, and then they will pour liquid metal down into all the passages.
Right. It'll follow the passages.
And then they dig it up, and it has this intricate design.
It'll cool off in the shape of basically the underground system of tunnels and caverns that the ants have created. Right.
Right.
What is your beef with this, Matt?
I saw this happening on a bigger scale.
You got a beef with this, don't you?
A little like they were in yes, I do. Like they were in a field in Texas. So it's like one of these big, like...
Everything is bigger than Texas.
Big.
These are big ants, too.
Big ants, you know.
I bet you these ants are the size of mice.
Ant.
I bet you the size of a mouse.
No. And they had cleared it out a little bit, and they were pumping...
Right.
Very thin concrete into this anthill.
Okay.
And then they spent days excavating?
Yeah, sure.
Excavating.
Right.
Did I say it right?
Sure.
The anthill to show all the passages and the rooms and all that. And I'm saying, for the record, that don't sound right. That don't sound right. You can't do that. You can't pump an anthill full of cement.
Why not? Tell me why.
Because it would destroy it. It would
What do you mean it would destroy it?
The passages aren't strong enough. And here's you want me to prove this, I know. So we've talked about tool and die making.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we make a tool for a machine,
right?
Someone actually makes the tool, like either out of metal or wood.
Sure. Okay.
And then what they used to do at least, until you have these big 3D printers and fancy CRC machines, you would press it into a box of sand.
Right.
Do you remember this?
They still do it.
They still do it.
They still do it today.
You would press your shape into a box of sand.
Yes.
And then you would fill that depression with metal.
Right.
And then you would have your part.
Right.
So you would, like you were talking about, you would create a negative image, in some cases, of the part. And then you would press it into the sand, and then you would create your part.
Right. Well,
or you would create a negative image.
Actually, in that case, you actually create the part.
Yes.
But it's a little bit oversized. It accounts for shrinkage.
Yep.
And they press that in the sand, like you say.
It's a sand mold.
And they can make some. So here's a. Did you know they do this? They can. You're talking about pouring it from one direction, right?
Yes.
So this is how the other way they do it. It's called foam casting.
Lost foam.
Yep. Did y'all do lost foam?
No, I used to live near a lost foam plant.
Okay.
And people really had a problem with it because you could wake up in the morning near that lost foam plant.
Yeah.
And there would be like snow on your deck.
Really?
Yeah. And it wasn't snowing.
Right. What was that from?
From the lost foam casting.
Okay.
So you'll go explain what lost foam casting.
So it's basically the same thing, is that you have this big box, you have this large box, and you have this, let's say you're creating, let's say you're creating.
This plant was creating the shields for outboard motors.
Okay. Well, let's just pretend it's a propeller.
Okay.
All right. Let's pretend they're making a propeller.
Yes.
Okay. What they do is they actually make a propeller out of styrofoam.
Yes.
It looks just like the propeller, but it's made out of styrofoam. And then what they do is they bury it in a box of sand.
Yes.
And it's a special kind of sand. Mm-hmm. And then they poke a little hole through the sand to where the foam is.
Yes.
And then they would dump the hot liquid metal through that hole, and it would melt the foam,
right,
displace the foam, and fill in the gaps where the foam was. And then you lift it out, and you actually have this rod where the tube was is a piece. You got to knock that off.
Right.
But now you've got that whatever was foam is now made out of that cast iron.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Lost foam casting.
Lost foam casting.
Now, this special sand this is getting toward my point about these anthills.
Yeah.
The special sand that you're talking about. Would you say it was very dense? Packed in tight? Really tight?
It is definitely a special kind of sand. It's dense. The amazing thing is they reuse it, right?
Yeah, they can reuse it.
They reuse that
because it's really dense. And so this is my point.
Yeah.
You're pouring concrete into these anthills. These anthills are not necessarily dense.
The ground they're in is dense.
No, you're assuming the ground is dense.
Well,
anything. I mean, it's out in a big old cow field.
The ground is dense. When was the last time you dug a hole around
I've dug a hole, but in North Carolina in red clay.
You get down to clay, you can't. I mean, you can barely get your.
This doesn't look. Yeah, but this doesn't look like. Now, if the anthill was here in North Carolina, I would say they would have a running chance at this.
But
this looks like some East Texas field.
That dirt is just as hard, man. It's baking in the sun. It's sitting there hard as a rock.
I'm saying that don't sound right.
So you're saying, okay.
I'm saying, I think this was staged.
I'll play along.
Okay.
I'll play along.
Because this is becoming a thing.
What are they doing? How are they doing it?
I don't know. I don't think it's real.
How are they doing it? What are they getting?
It's CGI, man. This is big concrete. This is big concrete.
What are they trying to prove?
I don't know. There's some kind of research, but I mean, like they have this big tree-looking thing that they had excavated all these passages, and the passages are too small to accept.
Oh, they're not too small.
To accept concrete.
Oh no, that wouldn't be too small. You thought thin that
how big an ant is.
Yeah, but think about this. It's just
going to be the end of the show right here.
It's just water, man.
This is going to be the end of the show.
Water. It's just water and Portland cement. It's not actually concrete.
We are going to.
There's probably hardly any aggregate in it. It's probably Portland cement.
True. It's probably
very fine powder in water. They're pouring that down there. It flows perfectly.
Even
causes almost no damage.
Even rain can cause damage to a nail.
How do you know?
Because I've seen the shows on national TV. And now
I would agree probably maybe the top 6 inches receives damage. But once you get down below 6 inches,
right, but that's
there's nothing going on.
6 inches is where you got to pump through it.
Don't you think they stick the hose 6 inches down to where the cavity is and they start pumping? You
think it's all fake, man.
You think it's all big fake.
Because it's almost like jewelry now. Like it's like art where they pump the liquid metal. You've seen that. That's what you were telling me about. It's where they pump metal in it and then they dig it out and then this kind of artsy looking. I
don't know if they really do that to sell it as art. I think they're just doing what these guys are doing out of concrete. Yeah. It's just that the metal, I think that they might be using lead, real good stuff.
Yeah.
They might be using lead and that's just easier to pour. And
I just think it would destroy
and they can just reuse it.
I think it destroys the nail.
I don't know why you think that.
I don't think it's packed tight enough.
That's what you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's just too loose. And I think the passages are too fine for that metal to flow through it like that. I think they would just collapse.
That ground underneath is packed tighter than a sand casting.
This is the Billman. We're staring at each other across the tops of the microphone.
It is denser.
And I'm deciding whether or not to believe.
It is much. I mean, you've been around sand casting.
I've been around sand casting.
It is much denser than that. I mean, you with this, once sand casting is set, when the sand is put in there, you can still kind of move it around with your finger.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Especially on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But it's packed in tight. We used to have some sand casting molds at the house from where they were making tools where Dad worked. So this stuff
it's packed, but
we need a scientist on here.
I think you need a shovel. We'll just go out. We need a shovel and Texas.
Well, I will agree with you. If we poured it in like one of these gopher holes, or not gopher, but
our molds,
chipmunk holes, whatever they are, I think you could do it with that. The passages are big enough, and this is red clay. I mean, I have set posts in North Carolina without using cement.
Right.
And they wouldn't hardly move. But I can't imagine it being that way in any other ground.
I'm trying to think of, certainly we've seen people do this in lesser materials.
In what?
You do this little thing. I feel like I saw someone do it once. They did it in a yellow jacket's nest.
I've seen that too.
Have you seen
people are doing that with the yellow jacket's nest too, and then
those passages should be plenty big.
I'll give you a yellow jacket's nest.
You give me a yellow jacket.
I give you a yellow jacket's nest or any big animal, but an ant is just too small. The passages are too fine.
I mean, ants need a lot of space, man, because these aren't one-way. These aren't one-way tunnels. These are at least two-way tunnels. Right?
Yeah, but still, they're not that. I can't admit. But they
how
have
big
chambers.
Do you think
some of these big chambers were big? They're the size of Warman.
Do you think you've seen the dirt that's piled on top, right?
Yeah.
That is a lot of dirt.
That is a lot of dirt.
In fact, I would say that the amount of dirt that's on the surface is about the amount of concrete that they pumped in.
Yeah, when I watched the picture, I immediately saw it. Well, I saw it on the internet.
Okay, well, let's. This
is an Instagram special.
So I will bite. Okay, what are they trying to do?
I don't know what they're up to.
What are they doing? Are they trying to get views?
Crazy things going on these days? They're trying to get views. Yes, absolutely.
All right, what was this, a viral?
I mean, people have done crazier things to get views.
Yes, right, and much more interesting things.
Right, but this is straight out of the Onion or the Babylon Bee. I mean, this is straight out of like a satirical newspaper, in my opinion.
You think this is all just hype?
I think it is. To me,
it seems like a lot of work to CGI an ant tunnel.
Yeah, but if that's what you did,
just for Instagram.
I have seen some pretty complicated skits for Instagram.
I don't deny that. And they're entertaining.
I think that's what this is. I think it's a stunt.
Did you follow this particular?
No. You've got all the information I have on this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I think it's worthy of you convincing yourself.
Now, I will admit, the first time I saw what you saw, where they poured metal in, I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking about it when I saw this second thing. I was like, wait a minute. I'm not sure they can do that. I understood the theory behind it, the sand casting.
Yeah.
But I was like,
keep in mind, these are probably pretty big ants too. It's Texas.
It is.
I mean, these are big ants. These aren't these little, these small little ants that are, the size of the pen, end of a pencil. I mean, these are big honking red ants that could probably lift you away if they wanted to.
Well, this may prove my point right here.
What's that?
In lost foam casting, is the passage down to the foam chamber a sand passage or like a tube of a different material?
No, I thought it was a sand passage.
If it's a sand passage, then I've got a chance of being wrong. If it's not a sand passage, if it's a tube, then I think I'm
pretty sure it's a sand passage. But now, in fairness, they're usually not that long.
They're not that long.
They're close to the surface.
But it would have to be something, because this is a manufacturing process, so it has to be reproducible.
Oh yeah.
And so whatever that passage is they would have to know it's not going to collapse every 3 or 4 times.
Oh, well, it can't collapse.
So that would. That would be a strike against my argument.
Yeah, but you realize once they pour it, they got to redo the sand casting.
No, I know that. But I'm just saying, like, if you develop a mold and you have an entrance like a sand tunnel, every 3 times you set up your mold with that same distance, it collapses. You wouldn't use that design.
You wouldn't do that, no.
Right. So if that sand tunnel holds, then that's a strike against me.
Right.
I could be wrong. It's potentially I'm wrong. We need an entomologist to call in.
I think it'd be interesting for you to send a message to these guys.
To the ones I saw on the internet?
Yeah. Send a message to them.
So
ask them the question.
Well,
why doesn't it collapse?
Here's the opposite question. So you're asking me, why would they be doing this? And I'm saying it's an internet stunt.
Right.
Well, I'm asking you the same question. Why would they do this? Why would you fill an anthill full of cement?
I think it's probably just for entertainment purposes, to see how big this thing really is. I mean, it's probably just out of curiosity. How big are these ant tunnels? How deep do they go?
And where do they get funding to do this if it's a legitimate project? Who's going to fund an anthill study?
Do you think it's a study or do you think it's a stunt?
Well, let's say I'm wrong. And these are actual real scientists filling anthills with concrete. Who would pay for that?
That's a good question. They probably found some government agency to fund the depth of sand. I could say why they would do it.
Well,
because they would want to know that if there is an anthill close to a structure, for instance, is there a chance that an ant can create a set of tunnels so big and vast that you could endanger the footing or foundation?
Did you come up with this off the cuff?
Just right now, I'm doing it.
Wow, that's impressive, man.
Or think about them burrowing around a power pole. Could they make such a mess that it would cause damage to infrastructure?
Okay.
And if the answer is yes, then I, as the power company, need to make sure there are no anthills around my pole.
We just fill them all with concrete.
Then in turn, and just walk away.
Well, that's my last question about this. What happened to all the ants?
They
killed off an entire colony of ants.
Well, that what's interesting though, when you bring that up, what's interesting is that you'd think there'd be ants embedded in the concrete, because when you pour hot liquid metal, the ants are just going to vaporize.
Yeah.
But when you do concrete, you'd think there'd be some kind of, unless they figure out how, and I don't even know how you get them all out. You don't yell down there and say, "I'm coming."
Right. Give them a chance to evacuate.
I mean, if you were to poison them, there's going to be dead ants down there now. And concrete, I would think, would get compromised. I would think you'd see some dead ant carcasses in your concrete.
I've got a lot of questions about this.
Keep going.
No, I'm just saying I have a lot of questions about. All right, so your assignment this week is either to prove me wrong or prove Peter right.
No. You're either proving you wrong or you're proving me wrong.
Or
because if you prove me right, you're proving you wrong. One of us has got to be wrong.
I think I actually said there. Or go look at a picture of these things. I don't even know what you would look up. Filling anthills with concrete.
I guarantee you'll have a metaflick. And for those of you that are new to the show, a metaflick is a term that we coined here on That Don't Sound Right for the phenomena that occurs when you go back to social media to find something you saw before and you, for the life of you, can't find it. That's a metaflick.
I probably couldn't find it again now.
I've spoken with several folks about metaflicks, and I thought it was me because I'm just very not tech savvy. I've talked to tech savvy people that are more tech savvy than I am, and they have confirmed this phenomenon that they cannot go back and find something they saw on social media in the past.
I've even seen it in the old school way where I'm hit the scan on my radio.
Yeah.
And it's scanning through stations.
Yeah.
And I don't hit scan enough to stop it. Right. And then I hit the back button and I can't find the thing I was just heard.
Oh, for some reason it can't tune back into that frequency.
Well, it does it. Well, no, or it just doesn't. It goes away. Like I keep scanning backwards to get back to where it was. Can't find it.
Man.
Metaflick. All right. It don't sound right, but you have come to the end of this episode of That Don't Sound Right.
Well, we want to thank everyone for listening. If this is your first time listening and enjoyed the show, would you consider hitting the subscribe button on the platform you listen with? Also, if you're that long time listener, would you consider leaving us a review or giving us a rating so others can easily find us and join the conversation?
All right, That Don't Sound Right is a production of TSR Podcast in conjunction with Camel City Studios. I am your co-host and sound engineer. Peter is your other host and web designer. Camille is your barista, and she made coffee for us tonight.
Oh, man, it's good.
And then Peter added some additional, what is that?
It's Buffalo Trace Distillery Bourbon Cream.
Bourbon cream.
That's thanks to listener Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
He's our beverage provider tonight.
Emily does our graphic design. Ella does our Instagram. We have not been on Instagram in the last couple of weeks simply because we have not thought of any ideas. Content creation is hard.
We're going to go find some ants this week.
Giorgio tests our merchandise. Brent is our international brand ambassador. And as always, listener number one is
Scott.
So until next week, keep talking.
And stay curious.